You are listening to KLRN Radio, where liberty and reason still reign.
Most writers and radio show hosts know that to connect with your fans, you need to do more than just write books or record the latest podcasts. There are many different elements that go into forming an online platform, but there are also many hidden traps. To make matters worse, solid advice on how to survive the muddy waters is scarce. In the book Hidden Traps, I talk about some of the important issues of working with an online platform, highlighting traps that could put your physical or internet security at risk or be harmful to your reputation. Are your social media posts just links with a few disjointed words, making you look like someone who can't complete a sentence? Did your new website cost you more than you anticipated? Are you leaking your personal contact details across the web without even knowing it? Then you need Hidden Traps. Although Hidden Traps is not officially released until August 1st, you can pre-order your paperback or ebook copy now from a variety of retailers, including Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and Kobo. Visit blackwolfpublications.com for more details.
Here's George Foreman with InventHelp.
Hi, I'm George Foreman. Do you have an idea for a new product or invention? People ask me all the time, George, how do I get my idea in front of companies? How do I get a patent? What do I do next? Do you have the same questions? I'll tell you like I'll tell them all. Call my friends at InventHelp.
Call InventHelp today for free information. InventHelp has been helping inventors for more than 30 years and has sales offices nationwide. InventHelp can submit your invention to companies who are interested in receiving new ideas. If you have an idea and want to try to patent it and submit it to companies, you should call InventHelp today for free information.
Listen, I can't guarantee a company will be interested in your idea, but I believe every inventor deserves the opportunity to step into the ring and take their best shot. Put InventHelp in your corner.
To get your free inventor's information, call 1-800-353-6490. That's 1-800-353-6490. Again, 1-800-353-6490.
KLRN Radio has advertising rates available. We have rates to fit almost any budget. Contact us at advertising@klrnradio.com.
This is Slickery Trigger for Rebel Road Tactical. With proper care and feeding, your pistol will be ready when you need it, there to save your life. Shouldn't your gear be that good? Whether you need a holster for comfortable everyday carry or a tough-as-nails holster for your next training course, Rebel Road Tactical has what you need. Check us out on the web at rebelroadtactical.com.
You're listening to the Spark Radio Network, internet radio like you've never heard before. Innovation, creativity, and imagination are all said to begin with a spark. So fasten your seatbelt and take the ride of your life and listen for the spark.
This is Ginny Ehrhart with Southern Sisters Radio, and I'm your Southern Sister. In case you didn't know, you can check us out every Sunday at 2 p.m. right here on KLRN. And I'd love to hear from you. Email me at radio@southernsistershome.com. Hey, y'all, it's Ginny Ehrhart from Southern Sisters Radio. It's fall, y'all, and we have a lot going on the Southern Sisters Radio Show. You can catch us every Saturday at noon on AM 920 The Answer. Check us out online at southernsistershome.com.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are less than a week away from a very special holiday, a holiday in which many a family member come to your doorstep. Some are more welcome than others, and with family comes the inevitable stresses. And we are welcoming our Southern sister, Ginny Ehrhart, back to When's World to help us have a stress-free Thanksgiving. Ginny, welcome back. How are you?
Hey, Joey. I'm good. Yes, stress-free. Those are the operative words. And it's actually a lot easier than you might think.
I'm going to need some really good advice and tips to help me make it through another year. Help me out here.
I hear you. I'm the same way. And I have to remind myself of this every year because I think especially in the South here, we have a tendency to want to make everything perfect all the time. And so I want to relieve everybody of that responsibility. But a few good tips for a stress-free Thanksgiving. Number one, have a plan and write it down. You know what I'm saying? Come up with your plan, your menu, anything that's important for you to remember about Thanksgiving. Jot it down. Keep it in a notebook. You could even keep it on your phone if you wanted to. And just don't do it on a piece of scratch paper where you're going to lose it. You know what I'm saying? That way you can refer back to it. So have a plan and write it down. Also, about a week before Thanksgiving, or 4 days in this case, right? You should definitely give your kitchen a good deep cleaning. You're going to thank yourself for that later. Get the refrigerator emptied out of any old food, anything that's cluttering it up, because you're going to need every square inch of that precious refrigerator real estate space come Thursday, right?
Absolutely.
And then as well, you want to prep your food ahead of time. Anything that you can do in advance is going to help you on Wednesday and Thursday when you're trying to get dinner on the table. Things like washing and chopping the vegetables ahead of time, storing them in little Ziploc bags that you can just pull them out when you're ready to assemble your dishes.
That is such a good idea. How about some tips for those of us who aren't hosting but are traveling to see other members of our family?
Yeah, I don't have any tips for that.
So maybe...
I'm not prepared. That's not in my notes, Joey.
No, but I love this. This is the impromptu excellence of When's World. So
it's okay.
You know,
I can pull it together.
as a Southern belle, right? You're very tactful. You're also very patient and kind. Maybe for those of us who aren't from the South, we're a little more direct, I say. And by direct, I don't mean more genuine. I just mean sometimes we're a little crass. What can we do besides the copious amounts of alcohol in the parking lot or driveway before we walk in?
Never underestimate the value of a little cocktail before you head over there. I think, honestly, for most people, Joey, just don't take the whole thing too seriously. Right. It may very well be that you're going to be, socializing and hanging out with maybe family members that maybe you don't get along with so well. Maybe if it wasn't for the fact that it was the holidays, maybe they're not who you would have chosen to hang out with, if you know what I mean, especially in this day and age when a lot of families are divided for a lot of different reasons. But just, lower expectations, quite honestly, just doing the best that you can. And remember, if you have children in the family, they're impressionable. We want to put on our best face for the younger generation. We want to show that despite the fact that we may have disagreements, even within our own family, we can still come together in the spirit of thankfulness and make it a great day. And who knows, it might even be an opportunity to mend fences.
That's such a beautiful thing. And in case you're just joining us, we are with our Southern sister, Ginny Ehrhart. Connect with her online, southernsistershome.com. And right now, talking about Thanksgiving, Black Friday right around the corner. Get 30% off. That's right, 30% off at checkout, southernsistershome.com, and free shipping. Promo code SISTERS. Now, Ginny, while I have you on the line, there's always a pivotal issue that comes up at Thanksgiving, and it happens after dessert. Everybody's full. How do we handle the leftover situation? Like, let's say I go over to a relative's house. How do I ask? Do I not ask? Do I just kind of see? Like, do I help clean? What are the rules?
Well, this is what I do. If you're at someone else's house, it's called the puppy dog eyes. You just kind of give them those sweet little, and you just say, that cranberry sauce was just the best I'd ever had. That pumpkin pie, I don't even know that I could replicate that at home. That was so good. I guarantee you'll be walking out with a plate, Joey.
Oh, so compliments.
Flattery. Look at you everywhere.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Ginny, your information is priceless and so time sensitive as Thanksgiving right around the corner. And of course, we'll have you back very soon in When's World because we've got Christmas coming up and I need some Christmas etiquette.
True. We'll have lots of advice for you, Joey. And happy Thanksgiving, and I'm thankful for you.
Oh, I'm thankful for you too, Ginny. Again, folks, connect with her, southernsistershome.com. Ginny, always great to have you. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to When's World, the Artist Corner. And this week, we are spotlighting Eddy, the Chief Clearwater, Chicago blues legend. Eddy, welcome to When's World, man. How are you doing?
Oh, very good. Thank you, Joey. Very good, yes. It's good to be able to plug in and talk to you for a while. Yeah.
We're here to talk about what he's got going on. EddyClearwater.com, EDDY, Clearwater.com. On Twitter, at Eddy Clearwater, also on Facebook as well. But you are best known for being a Chicago blues legend. And it all started, believe it or not, in the South. You were born in Mississippi.
In Macon, Mississippi, that's correct.
And you moved to Alabama around 13, right?
I moved to Alabama when I was 13 years old, yes. And then I moved to Chicago when I was 15, in September of 1950. So I've been here ever since. Yeah.
Man, playing music for so long, and you've had such an impact in the blues world. I read this really cool thing about how you were on stage and B.B. King saw you and asked you, how the heck do you play left-handed and upside down? That was like a turning point in your career, was it not?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. That's the one question he had for me. He said, there's one thing I want to ask you. How the heck do you play that thing on the left side?
And he also had some advice for you. He basically just said, play humbly and always give everything to your audience. And for sure you've lived by that since those words were spoken.
Oh, yes. He gave me that advice, and I kept it, and I tried my best to use it ever since, you know. So he told me that, and then Muddy Waters told me the same thing. When I went to Europe for the first time, before I was going to go, I went to see Muddy, and I had a talk with Muddy. So I explained to him that I'd be going to Europe for the first time. And I asked him, how should I conduct myself with the audience? Because I know he had been there many, many times. And he said, well, I'll tell you one thing, Clearwater. When you go there, when you get in front of the audience, just don't try to be fancy. Just play and be yourself, and just be who you are, and they'll accept you. And I did exactly what he told me, and I've been going back periodically ever since.
That's such good advice. I think that's practical wisdom for anybody in any area of life. And you stayed true to yourself. It's so funny because when I look at the headdress, I thought, well, how did this all come to be? And a fan actually gave you the headdress, which eventually led to the nickname Chief, right?
Exactly. A lady named Pat Sweet. I went to her house, and she had it hanging up in the den of her house. So I said to her, that's a beautiful piece. I'd like to buy it from you for my stage appearance. And she said, at first she said, no, I can't sell it to you because it belonged to my deceased husband, and I can't part with it. So I kept expressing my desire for it from time to time, and she said, I'll tell you what, I won't sell it to you, but I'll give it to you as a good luck charm, providing you never part with it.
Wow.
So I shook her hand, and she said, it's yours, you know. So I've been wearing it ever since, you know.
That's such a cool story, man. And, you know, you've played with a lot of awesome people. You mentioned Muddy, but also a phenomena here in the South, the Five Blind Boys of Alabama.
Alabama, oh, yeah.
So cool, man. How did that come to be?
Well, I was just a kid. I was like, 14 years old.
Yeah.
And my uncle knew them because he went to churches where they would sing that every Sunday. So then he knew if he found out that they needed a guitar player to play with them on a couple of Sundays and stuff. So they asked my uncle to ask me if I would play with them. And I said, well, I sure will. I'd be glad to. So that's how it worked out, yeah.
You're one of those guys that looked up to Chuck Berry, and the more I hear of the deeper cuts of Chuck Berry, I can understand why he was idolized by the early guitarist. And you've been going at it since the 50s, ever since you were a kid, self-taught, by the way, which is pretty much unheard of nowadays. Nowadays, you have online lessons. There's a music store on every corner. But how did you teach yourself? I mean, I know you're a very modest and humble guy, but shoot me straight, man. How hard was it to teach yourself the ins and outs of blues guitar?
Well, at first I thought it was kind of difficult by me being left-handed. But then I got the hang of it, and what I did, I went to see a lot of people that I liked a lot, like Earl Hooker. I used to go and see Magic Sam, which he and I became very close friends. Then I went to see Otis Rush. So they were all playing in the city of Chicago at that time. From night to night, I could go from one to the other. There were blues clubs all over the west side and the south side. So I would go one night, I'd go to see Magic Sam, and then the next night I could go see Otis Rush on Roosevelt Road, and then Elmo James on Madison Street at the Happy Home Lounge. They were all over the place, and Howlin' Wolf. And so I would go and just sit and listen to them play and watch what they were doing, you know, and just watch the response and see what the concept was. And I picked up a lot from people like Magic Sam, and Otis Rush, and those are my heroes. And then later on, I got to hear Chuck Berry, and I said, "Oh, this is my idol right here." You know, it's just kind of all mixed it in, I guess.
Man, when I listen to blues music, sometimes I wonder, how do you guys play blues when you're in a really good mood? How difficult is it to play, or does it just kind of come naturally? Do you conjure the emotion of past experiences, or perhaps a sad face in the crowd? How does that work for you?
Well, you adjust yourself according to what the conditions are. If say if things are going very difficult for you at a certain time period, then you put yourself into that mood, and this gives you more incentive to really play the blues, because you say, well, I really got the blues, so I'm going to get up here and really dig into it, you know. So, for instance, like Albert Collins, when he gets angry, that's when he really would tear you up with that guitar.
Hell of a guitar player, Albert Collins was.
Oh, absolutely, yes. Yeah, so it goes according to the mood you're in. If you're in a good mood, then you say, well, God, I'm going to play some happy blues. So you get up there and play blues that's danceable, and people get up and have a good time. And then that brings you out of, say, if you have a bad mood, then it all works itself out.
And I was listening to one of your tracks. It's called Blues for Breakfast. And I thought to myself, what would Eddy Clearwater eat for breakfast if he had the blues? And what kind of breakfast would bring the blues upon Eddy Clearwater? What's your flavor nowadays? I know you had bypass surgery back in '97. How's that affected your life? Has it affected your playing at all, touring, that kind of thing?
No, I slowed down a little bit, but not really, because I came through my surgery. Thank God I came through quite well, and I just had a couple of good doctors that they make sure that I eat right and take my medication. So I try to stay in pretty good shape. So I get up there, and then music it feels very healing to me. When I play music. It just brings a lot of happiness and a lot of joy to my life, and I try to keep my physical health in as good a shape as I can. I don't drink, and I never did drugs or anything.
Wow!
So I try to keep it as clean as possible. You know?
How can people connect with you? Are you still touring nowadays? I know you have a ton of stuff. You're on Spotify. You're all over the internet, social media, eddyclearwater.com. What kind of projects are you into nowadays?
Yeah, well, I just did a short tour out east from going to New York, and I did Connecticut, and I did Boston, New York, and Connecticut, and Philadelphia, just a few weeks ago. So I toured quite a bit out west and kind of all over. Then I'm going to Europe next year.
Wow.
They're working on a European tour for next year, so I go back and forth quite a bit.
Well, you got to let us know when you're coming to Atlanta, man. I would love to see you live, and I love the picture of you and your bandmates. Such an eclectic group of people, all sorts of backgrounds there. How did you meet those guys?
Well, just in Chicago at different blues clubs. They walk in, you need players, and they walk in, and that's a good blues community in Chicago. So if they know you need a musician, someone will come up with exactly what you need, the kind of person you need, a whole bit. So it just kind of works itself out pretty well.
And I'm looking at all these different guitars you play, but I'm sure you have a favorite, right? Every
Gibson 335.
What would be your dream guitar when you pass on, and hopefully not for some time, but when you pass on and move to the house of the Lord, what kind of guitar would you want to take with you if you could only choose one?
If I could choose just one, I would take my Gibson 335. That's the one I use constantly. I have a B.B. King Gibson stereo, Lucille, but I don't take that out of the house much anymore because he autographed it for me, so I kind of keep it close to my bedside.
Tell it good night and stuff. That's good stuff, man. That's awesome.
Oh yeah.
Do you have a nickname or a pet name for your 335?
No, I just call it my red baby. I'm a little red baby.
That is so good, man. This is awesome, and I got to tell you, folks, you got to listen. He's on Spotify. Check out his website, EDDYClearwater.com. Eddy the Chief Clearwater. It's been so good to talk to you, man. I feel
good to talk to you. Very good, Joey.
Thank you. It's been an honor. And, of course, connect with Eddy on Twitter, at Eddy Clearwater there. Eddy, it's been a blast, man. Thanks for letting us spotlight you right here in the Artist Corner.
Oh, it's a real pleasure, and I hope to be coming south someplace because my agent is Casey, and he's working on a tour for me for next year. So hopefully I'll be coming south because he's out of Florida.
If you come through Georgia, man, I'd love to see you play here in Atlanta. There's a lot of cool bars.
What's that? The new club? Is that club called Vista? Just open?
The Vista Room is in Decatur. I think that's the one you're talking about.
Oh, yeah, okay. It's like a suburb of Atlanta, I guess.
Yeah, there's a ton of different spots. Atlanta is so large. There's blues bars up on the north side, the south side. This is a very eclectic music community as well. I think you would love playing.
I played Blind Willis quite a few times.
Wow.
Yeah, I used to play Atlanta Underground when it existed. I used to play a blues club in Atlanta Underground, yeah.
Wow, that's old school. I remember when Underground was still a thing. Now it's kind of not.
That's right. Yeah, that was back during the time it was kind of happening.
Thank you so much for your time, Eddie, man. I hope you have a great day.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so, and I'll talk to you real soon. Yes, yeah.
Hi, I'm Caitlin Carr from Reasons to Believe, and I would give up my right arm just to listen to When's World.
It's Weird Science time.
Yes, indeed, it is time for Weird Science, and it gets no weirder, my friends, as we welcome one of our favorite doctors back to When's World, Dr. Fazale Rana. Dr. Fuzz, how you been, man?
I've been doing great, Joey. How about you?
Doing fantastic. Today we're talking about connecting the brain with bionic limbs. And in my mind, I'm thinking back to that game Bionic Commando for the Nintendo Entertainment System. But this is actually finding practical purpose in modern day society. Give us the thumbnail of the latest study concerning the bionic limbs.
Yeah, well, the study was essentially done by a team of French neuroscientists who were trying to understand what happens to the brain of amputees when they have a procedure called TMSR performed on them, which stands for Targeted Motor and Sensory Reinnervation. But it's essentially a technique that allows patients who are amputees to be able to control robotic prosthetic devices with their thoughts. So this research basically indicates that when this procedure is performed on amputees, it actually helps to preserve neural connections in the brain that would otherwise be used to control limbs in people that are healthy individuals. And they also discovered that people that don't have the procedure done but are amputees actually see a degradation in those neural connections. They see, in a sense, a loss of key brain activity.
So we've all read about these kinds of things in sci-fi novels and seen them in sci-fi movies, but how new is this practical application of this technology for the human race?
Yeah, well, I mean, this is a fairly new technology. Now, researchers have been exploring this possibility since probably 2004. A team of researchers from Northwestern University were the first researchers to try this TMSR procedure, which is really pretty interesting because what the researchers do is take muscles that would no longer be useful once a limb is amputated. And so they've been working with patients who've had the entire arm taken off. And when that happens, like the pectoral muscles no longer really have any kind of use. And so what they do is they remove the nerves from the pectoral muscle and the skin covering the muscle, and then they reroute the remaining nerves from the limb that was amputated to the pectoral muscle and to the skin, and then the patient is able to control that pectoral muscle with the same nerves that they would otherwise control their lost limb with, and they can receive sensation from the skin and the muscle that goes back to the brain. And so what the researchers are doing then is using those electrical signals on the pectoral muscle and the skin as a way to allow the patient to control that robotic prosthetic limb. So on one hand, it's an idea that's been in play for a number of years, but it's still new in the sense that it's experimental.
And if you're just joining us, we are with Dr. Fazale Rana of Reasons to Believe. Connect with them online, reasons.org, where faith and science converge out there in the great state of California. And you can connect with the good doctor himself on Twitter at RTB_FRANA. And right now it sounds like there are no drawbacks, but with everything in life, there are blessings and curses. Any potential curses or bad things that could be associated with these bionic limbs?
Well, we're in an interesting time where a lot of the technologies that are being developed in biomedicine can treat horrible diseases and debilitating injuries like the loss of limbs. But on the other hand, these technologies could also be used for human enhancement purposes. Right now, everybody that's working on these prosthetic limbs are really looking at their applications for therapeutic purposes. But this technology, once it is perfected, could easily be used as a way to enhance human strength, let's say. And so you could envision scenarios in the future where if somebody wanted to have a more powerful robotic arm, they very well may actually want to have their actual arm amputated and replaced with a prosthetic limb that they can control with their mind. So we're going to have to face some pretty significant ethical questions in the near future because of this kind of technology.
But you did mention superhuman strength as definitely a potential drawback. Do you foresee that being a realistic outcome of this in the near future, or do you think that's something that we don't need to worry about right now, but just keep an eye on for the future?
I think it's something that we just want to keep an eye on for the future. I mean, we don't need to worry about it in the immediate now because, this is still, again, an experimental procedure, and it's showing some real promise, but researchers are still trying to understand how to perform the surgery effectively. Right now, the technique is only useful for people that have had an entire limb removed. They're trying to develop a modification of this medical procedure for people that have just lost, let's say, the lower portion of their arm below the elbow. They haven't been able to do anything yet with lower limbs. And so there's quite a bit that we need to learn, even trying to decode the signals and get the signals to control the prosthetic limb or giving the patient a sense of ownership of the limb or things that are still quite a ways away. So this is something that, right now we don't need to be concerned with, but the way technology is progressing, it's progressing so rapidly that before we know it, the capacity to enhance human biology may very well be upon us. And so we need to start thinking about it now, not when it actually is on our doorstep.
The more I think about superhuman strength, the more I like the idea. Perhaps like a quarterback that can throw a football 100 yards, or like have a Bionic sports league. That would be kind of a far stretch right now, right? But as you've mentioned, technology has grown leaps and bounds in the last 100 years and less there. Do you foresee that being a possibility in maybe 100, 200 years from now?
Yeah, I actually do see that as a possibility, and it's really interesting because of this, potential to enhance human capabilities. There is a movement that has emerged called transhumanism, and this idea started in the 60s. It was kind of a fringe idea, but it's now gaining mainstream credibility, and the idea here is that we have a moral obligation, according to transhumanists, to actually enhance human capabilities beyond our biological limits with the hope of improving upon our body's designs and maybe even one day creating these post-human species that would have capabilities far beyond our current biological limits. And in fact, even with the possibility of one day extending human life expectancy to hundreds of years, maybe even achieving some type of immortality. So this rather unusual idea is, again, becoming mainstream because of advances like we're seeing in this particular study. So, technology is kind of a double-edged sword. It can be used for really good things, but also it has this potential to create a brave new world that we're going to have to contend with.
The more I think about it, the harder the line is to draw and the more blurred it becomes between playing God and just helping ourselves. How do you think we flesh that out as we progress towards a more technologically advanced society?
Yeah, it's really a tricky question. And what we need at the end of the day is really a robust ethical system. And as a Christian, I believe that Christianity provides that system because as Christians, we believe that human beings are made in God's image. And because of that, all human life has inherent worth and value. And so, as Christians, we would be in support of developing technology that would alleviate pain and suffering, that would promote human flourishing, but we never want to compromise the dignity of human life, nor do we want to compromise our identity as human beings. And so as long as the technology helps and doesn't cross those kind of lines, I think it's something that we can be excited about, but we have to be vigilant, and we really have to have very important discourse as a society in terms of what we're going to do and not do with the technology.
How would you see that being fleshed out? So in essence, a vote or some sort of congressional action, or do you think that would be an executive order, maybe the medical community? How would you see that? And I know we're jumping ahead here, but how do you see that working itself out, as it pertains to setting limits and boundaries, as it pertains to superhuman strength and transhumanism?
Well, I mean, I think we would have to have definitely very strong regulations that are enforced, not only in the United States, but really in every country in the world. And we'd also have to have the scientific community be willing to police itself. And that can only really happen if we are giving scientists and engineers actually training in ethics, which is something that is not part of a science or an engineering education.
Right.
But as we have these kind of capabilities that are emerging, scientists and engineers can't get off with the excuse that they're just scientists and they don't have to think about these things, because I think they do.
We just don't want to see a Terminator 2 scenario come to real life. That's kind of where we're going with this. I mean, I hate to take it down the sci-fi road, but it is sci-fi in essence.
Yeah, science fiction is becoming a reality, and you don't want somebody knocking on your door asking if you're Sarah Connor.
Right? Yeah, no kidding. And just for a more practical purpose, we worry about being hacked, our computers. What would stop somebody from perhaps hacking somebody else's limbs or using them to cause damage without their consent?
Yeah, well, you're raising a really, really important point, and that is technology can be used for good and it can be used for evil. And if we have a naive view of humanity where we think that human beings are only good, that's going to really open ourselves up to people doing some rather wicked things with these technological capabilities. And so, we can't underestimate, our capacity as human beings to do evil and to do wicked things to one another. And as the technology becomes more powerful, the capacity to do evil becomes more powerful.
I guess it would be fair to say that there are a whole lot of unanswered questions and potentially a ton of unintended consequences as it pertains to brains with bionic limbs attached. This is fascinating stuff, and always with the keenest of insights. Dr. Fazale Rana, you can connect with Reasons to Believe, where faith and science converge, online, reasons.org, and of course on Twitter at RTB_official. But while you're on Twitter, go ahead and connect with the good doctor himself at RTB_FRANA. Dr. Fuzz, always great to have you in When's World, man. Thank you so much for your time.
Joey, thanks for having me.
Ladies and gentlemen, as you know, When's World is all about levity and fun, but every now and then there's an issue that comes up in these United States that definitely demands attention, and church shootings are one of those. As a believer, this issue has really touched me, and this is something that I've thought about for a very long time. Anybody that sits in a congregation, whether it be of any faith, it seems as if we're sitting ducks. We have our back turned to the door, and it can be a very scary situation. It definitely was for those in that Texas church a couple weeks back. I'm honored to bring on a guest that has a very sound take on this, and this is Reverend Rob Schenke. Rob, welcome to When's World. How are you?
Thank you. And yes, I wish I were laughing with you, but on this occasion, it's pretty serious, and I appreciate the fact that you would take the time to address it. I think it's something we all need to take very seriously.
Absolutely. Ever since I was a boy, I've gone to church. At first, I went because my parents just said, get up and get dressed. We're going to church. And now as an adult, I realize the importance of staying connected to the faith that I grew up on. But nowadays, it seems as if we're dealing not only with our own issues, but the issues of others. Outsiders coming in and causing harm to the congregation. We saw 26 people pass away a couple weeks back in Texas. And this has really spurred the conversation and in some cases a debate about guns in churches. Now, as an ordained evangelical minister and the president of the Dietrich Bonhoeffer Institute located in D.C., you have a pretty strong opinion about this issue, Rob.
Well, I sure do. And here's where we get a little light and a little darkness. The darkness, of course, is the terrible tragedy in Sutherland Springs. It's unthinkable, almost unspeakable, the horror that was visited on that precious little church and that community. And yet at the same time, here we go on an upswing. There are 350,000 churches in America.
Yeah.
One of them was visited with horror, something no church should ever experience in the history of the world. But in 349,999 other churches on that same Sunday, we found peace, prayers, preaching, people caring for each other, all safe and all secure. And that's important for us to remember, because it's easy to distort all this when we're looking at headlines and we're looking at 20-second news broadcasts and the alarming sense. And, of course, it's alarming. We should feel that because they are our friends and our brothers and sisters in Christ, even though they may be far away from us. But at the same time, we can thank God that in the majority of churches, it will remain peaceful, prayerful, and safe places.
Man, that's such a beautiful take and insight from Reverend Rob Schenke. Of course, you can connect with him online. His website, REV Rob Schenke, SCHENCK.com, and also TDBI.org, and on the socials at Rev Rob Schenke 1 Twitter there. So where do we go from here? I mean, that was a beautiful sermon that you just gave, and I'm not poking. I'm literally saying that it's a beautiful take because it's very true. For those of us who go to churches and perhaps the big churches have armed security guards, off-duty cops, but what about those of us who go to the smaller churches, the ones where this idea of parishioners carrying, whether visibly or invisibly, lethal weapons into the sanctuary, is that a realistic option and possibly expectation?
Well, realistic in this sense that we all have emotional responses. We have concerns and should have concerns. Pastors should care about both the souls and the bodies of those under their charge. Church leaders, members who worship together should care enough about one another to want to protect each other. Of course, that's a human impulse. I believe it's a God-given impulse.
Right.
But we want to do that wisely, and we want to do it carefully, and we want to do it prayerfully. When the call goes out that the only response to this is folks coming to church armed and ready to kill, anyone who's been undergone firearms training, as I have, has been told by an instructor that when you take a weapon on your body, you must be ready to use it to kill, and kill in an instant. And in the case of a church or your own home, you're likely to be killing someone you know, right, your own family member or somebody known to you. Statistically, that's the case. So we have to come ready to kill. And the question we must ask ourselves as Christians is, do we go to the house of God to surrender our lives to the Lord and to others, or do we go to the house of God to take a human life? That's an important moral and ethical question that we must struggle with as we consider how to protect each other.
Now, you're looking at that issue candidly, wisely, carefully, and prayerfully. What conclusion have you come to?
That we need to be wise and prudent, which may mean that we do in certain circumstances, and we have to be careful to discern, are we in imminent danger of this? Most churches are in greater danger of a hurricane than they are of a mass shooting. But putting that aside, if we are in imminent danger, then how can we first protect ourselves in a non-lethal fashion where we don't have to think about killing another human being in order to protect ourselves? And there are non-lethal means of protecting a congregation that's meeting in a church, structural and otherwise. You can have a police cruiser out in the parking lot. That can be a very intimidating element.
Sure.
But we have to be careful who's carrying the weapons, because a church is a family, and families have dysfunctional members. And when you ask amateurs, volunteers, to carry a lethal weapon, you're not always certain of the outcome of that. So I tell pastors, look at off-hours law enforcement officers who can be hired off hours. They are highly trained, highly rehearsed, and held highly accountable for the way they use their weapons. And putting them outside rather than inside the sanctuary can be a way of maintaining the kind of witness and the kind of atmosphere that we want to have when people are collecting themselves to worship Almighty God.
I think that's such a fantastic point, Reverend Rob Schenke. Again, we are with Reverend Rob Schenke, an ordained evangelical minister and president of the Dietrich Bonhoeffer Institute. Connect with the good Reverend on Twitter at Rev Rob Schenke 1. And as we conclude our chat together, Reverend, I want to know, basically, for those of us who don't call a specific church home, there's a lot of America that's definitely looking for the truth that many of us have found in the house of the Lord. But how do we balance security at the same time with a feeling of welcoming in churches for those of us who don't have a church home or the non-believer? What advice would you give to churches that we haven't discussed, and perhaps that you would give to somebody visiting a church in light of these circumstances as of late?
Well, first, for the church or the worshiping family itself, whatever form that may take, it's setting our priorities and holding firm to our priorities and not giving into the temptation of fear. For most places, this is a place of safety, security, solace, comfort, warmth, human relationships. And if that's our top priority, yes, we will think about security, for sure, but we can put that kind of in the background in a less visible form, because it's terribly important that people feel they're not entering a danger zone. Right. And statistically, that is not the case for houses of worship.
Man, this has just been a fantastic time with Reverend Rob Schenke. Rob, thank you so much for spending some time with us here in When's World, and we really appreciate it. Again, connect with the good Reverend on his website, revrobschenke.com, also tdbi.org. Any closing thoughts as we conclude our time together?
Well, let's stay focused on the good stuff, because ultimately good triumphs over evil.
I'm JP Sears. I'm levitating in When's World, and now I'm fully enlightened.
Folks, I am absolutely honored to have His Enlightenedness, author, comedian, and satire specialist, JP Sears, right here in When's World. JP, welcome to the show, man. How are you?
I'm pretty good for a redhead, so that's the best I can be doing. But, yeah, so happy to be here, Joey. I appreciate you inviting me on.
Of course, man. For those of you who aren't familiar with JP, he has over 200 videos on YouTube. Of course, he has an awesome website where you can connect with him personally, awakenwithjp.com, and every single social media outlet at awakenwithjp. And this dude has just written a book. It dropped just a couple months ago. It's called How to Be Ultra Spiritual, 12 and a half Steps to Spiritual Superiority. JP, I have gotten through almost all of this book, and there's so much that goes into it. What was the magic behind the thought process of writing this book?
Yeah, well, one, you having been through most of the book, you've gotten further through it than I have. I wrote about it. I refuse to read it. So I put my heart and soul into the book, and for me, the magic is I wanted to share my perspectives through the language of humor. I think comedy is a language that a lot of people can connect to. It's a language that a lot of people are willing to pay attention to. So comedy being a very natural aspect of just my being, it's sort of like, a fish swimming in water. So using that to share the perspectives that I'm passionate about, helping people help themselves find more meaning in their lives, let go of old dogma, let go of that which served them that no longer serves them. That, to me, that's the intended magic to be imprinted in the book.
Now, I love how you bring up your family background into the book, like your mom's love for the band Journey. And there's a good portion of the book. You know how in society people tell us it's not about the destination, it's about the journey. But go into why you think that the journey industry is an absolute fraudulent industry.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. If you buy into the propaganda that the journey is really what it's all about, then you're a returning customer. You never get there, so it's just kind of like you're on the treadmill of always needing to be on the journey, so they get you with a scam. But if you actually reach the destination, then you wouldn't be a returning customer. And I kind of think the statement, it's a journey, not a destination, is a bit of a destination itself.
You are a hardcore vegan, are you not?
There's definitely a part of me that's a hardcore vegan, but I simultaneously eat a hardcore meat-eating diet. So I'm an equal opportunity diet employer. But the most enlightened part of me is a hardcore vegan for sure.
That's awesome. In a lot of your videos, people can see you out with the headband on and the flower. And I got to know, what's the thought process behind that?
There was not much thought process behind that originally. So I was filming the first ultra spiritual video, and just at the last second, the camera was even out, it was on, and at the last second I thought, wow, New Age people, kind of like a headband and a flower, that's a little bit symbolic of the culture. So just at the last minute, I grabbed something, rigged up a headband, and then once I stumbled into the idea of like, oh, hey, I could actually make more videos, after the first one was out for a few weeks, then I just thought, well, the headband, that's a character building sort of thing. So let me do that again. The headband's obviously the most important part of my life.
There's a chapter in your book, chapter 11, that talks about plant medicine compulsions. And I wanted to get your thoughts on whether April 20th is truly significant or we should all celebrate this day every day of the year.
Yeah, more is always better when it comes to celebrating 420. And to me, the magic of cannabis is, once upon a time, it was a dangerous drug. I mean, according to the wise sage Ronald Reagan, it was just a lethal drug. But somehow this magical plant transformed into a medicinal herb. So I just think that's beyond majestic. It's a very mysterious aspect of the plant.
How much has cannabis played a role in mindfulness for you?
That's a good question. I think it should play a role for other people. Probably 100% of their mindfulness practice, because it really comes down to preventative medicine, and because it's medicinal. And there's a lot of diseases that people need to prevent, so there's a lot of preventative medicine that they need to participate in. But for me personally, it is just not my thing.
So you talk about being religiously unreligious. Did you grow up in a somewhat religious home, or was this thought process gained across the way, along your journey?
Yeah, I grew up pretend Catholic, really. My mother's side was Catholic, and we didn't really go to church that much, but whenever my grandparents were around, the thing to do was we just pretended that we went to church all the time to try to make them happy. So that's a little bit of a dabbling into Catholicism gave me a taste of religion, but I wasn't suffocated by it. And then, doing some reading and studying, acting like a astute human being, I've dabbled into some of the knowledge of religions, but I've, never really had the pull to deep dive and brainwash myself in any philosophy, whether it's religion or labeled something else. I guess you could say I am religiously unreligious.
Now, you talk about gurus following your followee, and you mentioned quite a few aspects of your life. They're really funny, and you also incorporate stories of fans and friends of yours. Now, if there's one person that you would say that you've looked up to the most, who would that be and why?
I think the Dalai Lama. I think he represents the ideal fitness level we should all strive for. I think his ability to crush a 4-hour meditation within 5 minutes is just something that, it's very inspiring how he transcends time. And I think his ability to keep his head shaved, because when you boil it down, all enlightened people either have long hair or they're bald. There's really no middle ground on that. I've been rocking the long hair status for a while, but it's a lot of maintenance, really. I think to be a responsible spiritual teacher, I need to advocate people go bald, because I think it was Spider-Man's uncle who once said, with great hair comes great responsibility.
J.P. Sears holds 3 world records, one for humbleness, one for being the most spiritually awake, and the third one for being the most humanly asleep. In addition, a universal record for radiance. How do you respond to this kind of acclaim?
Yeah, I don't think of those accolades too much, because I'm too humble to dwell on them. I'm the most humble person I know, so I really don't like to talk about those. But I realize our agreement for this conversation was that you're contractually obligated to mention them.
Yes.
So I love to demand other people talk about my accolades, but, being humble. I don't like to mention them.
All right, so what I want to do really quick is go through these 12 and a half bullet points. If you can give me like a sentence or two that kind of encapsulate that chapter, because I know you're on a time thing, and I really appreciate your time, JP.
Yeah, I would be more than happy to pretend that I remember what I wrote.
All right, so let's start with chapter 1, because that's a good place to start. The name of the chapter is Competitive Spirituality. What does that mean to you?
It basically means proving to other people around you that you're more spiritual than them, because it's really a competition when you boil it down. So proving that you're better than other people and proving that you're better than who you used to be is really the name of that game. And another way of looking at it is it's proving that you're less worse than other people.
What role does subtlety play in that, do you think?
I think the more subtle, the better. The more you can get people to imply in their own minds that you are more spiritual than they are, the deeper the realization of your spiritual superiority will go in their being.
Now, speaking of deeper spirituality, tell us how in your life feelings buried alive helped you thrive.
Yeah, it's an absolute accident that human beings have emotions. The only place for emotions is being buried under 6 feet worth of denial. So the one thing that's going to impair your spiritual practice is everything that makes you human, and your emotions make you more human than anything else. So the less emotions you have, the less human you are, and therefore the more spiritual you are. And by the way, the key to getting rid of your emotions is basically pretending that they're not there. It makes it true.
Now, you're talking about your awakening in this book a lot and other people's awakenings. Tell us the importance of dreaming it up versus actually experiencing an awakening.
Yeah, what really counts with regard to your awakening is your ability to tell other people that it happened and your ability to have a good story, complete with adversity and triumph within that story. So a good story doesn't have that much correlation to truth. So if your awakening story isn't a very good one, then you can just truth it up with a little bit of fiction.
Now, you are a yogi, are you not?
I am.
Excellent. So how does yoga in your life increase your flow?
Oh, wearing yoga pants is where it's at. I mean, the benefit of yoga, it's 5% doing the yoga and 95% wearing pants that are significantly too tight for your adult size. So ideally, for good yoga results, you're wearing pants that look like they should have fit you well in 3rd grade.
Now, we talked about veganism a tad before in this conversation, but tell us about how veganism is satiating our spiritual hunger.
Absolutely. So being a vegan is all about expressing unconditional love for all living beings, except for meat eaters. You're supposed to hate them. So, yeah, and our higher self, if I can speak for everybody's higher self, which I will, our higher self is so unconditionally loving that it loves to hate meat eaters.
So we talked about gurus earlier and following your followee. What role should gurus have in my life, per se? Your direct connection with the Great Spirit has nothing to do with your direct connection to the Great Spirit. It's to be found through your direct connection to a middleman, the guru, who is your direct connection to the Great Spirit. I mean, it makes sense, because the more of a middleman there is between you and the spirit world, the more you're directly connected to the spirit world. And a good guru should not only tell you what to think, but a good guru should tell you that what he's telling you what to think is exactly what you are thinking naturally. So there's a lot of freedom and liberation with having a guru. Go into a little bit about the importance of mindfulness.
Mindfulness, that's actually a trap, Joey. I teach mindfulness.
Right.
It has all the fullness of mindfulness with none of the mind. When you think about one spiritual journey, meditation practice, it's all about getting past the mind. I think the whole mindful movement is just a ploy to get people trapped in their minds even deeper. That's why I teach mindfulness.
Now, we're on the subject of the mind. Let's go into a little bit about merciless meditation.
Yeah, the more aggressive, the better with the meditation. And my experience is the more public, the better as well. So being able to crush a meditation out in the city park where you just so happen to be noticed by hundreds of people walking by, that mysteriously increases your meditation results. And the other thing that we all need to remember is dropping how long you meditate in conversations is vastly important to actually get results in your meditation experience.
Right, the quantitative data that you mentioned in your book.
Absolutely. It's like if a tree falls in the forest and nobody's there to hear it, doesn't make a sound. It's like, well, if you meditated for 60 minutes and nobody's there to hear about it, did you really meditate for 60 minutes? And no, you did not.
Of course, Chapter 9 goes into being critically non-judgmental. What does that mean to His Enlightenedness, J.P. Sears?
Oh, yeah, it means non-judgmental people are the ones I judge to be the most non-judgmental. I judge them to be the most spiritually enlightened. So I think it's very important that we take our non-judgmentalness very seriously and have a very critical eye that we bring to it. Because quite honestly, from my place of complete non-judgment, I determine that non-judgmental people are simply better than judgmental people. And that's not a judgment. That's just an observation.
Now, of course, we talked about your spiritual walk in religion. You consider yourself religiously unreligious. But to the listener here in One's World, what does that exactly mean to you?
It means you're so anti-religious, you're so anti-dogma, that you become very dogmatically against dogma. Dogmatically undogmatic, and you're with religious fervor. I don't even know what that means, but it's a fun word to use. With religious fervor, you're radically against religion.
Tell us about the importance of plant medicine compulsions in your life.
Yeah. So plant medicine, it has the ability to help you reach a level of enlightenment that you don't have the ability to achieve on your own, at least. So, and there's a direct correlation between how high a plant gets you and its medicinal value. So, of course, the more a plant will blitz you out of your mind, it helps you seek sobriety from your sober mind. So the more it does that, the more of a spiritual experience it is for you. So, nonetheless, plant medicine can do all the work for you.
One of the coolest aspects of this book is that in the later part, Chapter 12, you give us grounds for spiritual testing so we can measure ourselves against J.P. Sears, his enlightenedness.
Absolutely. So there is a test that I give people, because a lot of people, Joey, they say, oh, am I ultra spiritual? How do I know? Well, there's a test in the back of the book, and the test is guaranteed to make sure you don't pass it unless you are, in fact, ultra spiritual.
That test helps lead us to the 12th and a half chapter of your book, Convincing Spirituality. In your life and in my life, what should I consider to be convincing spirituality?
Yeah, convincing spirituality is all about helping other people recognize your spiritual superiority. So it's really the crescendo of the whole book. So we have to consider, what clothes am I wearing? Is my shirt purple enough? Is it expensive enough that it looks cheap enough to exude the aura of I care about the earth and nothing else? Here's my $79 hemp T-shirt that looks like it costs $3. I mean, that is a stamp of convincing spirituality.
Author J.P. Sears, his enlightenedness, connect with this guy on social media, from Snapchat to Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, so on and so forth, at Awaken with JP. Check out his YouTube channel, Awaken with JP, over 200 awesome videos. You will laugh till your chakras hurt, all 7 of them. And of course, you can connect online, his website, awakenwithjp.com. Author, spiritual guru, and my personal hero, J.P. Sears, thank you so much for your time today here in One's World, man.
Oh, you're welcome, Joey. Thank you for having me into this bubble of a world you have. I love it.
Yo, Monkey, it's me, DDP, Diamond Dallas Page, the king of Bada Bing, the master of the diamond cutter, the three-time world champion and CEO and founder of DDP Yoga. You're listening to When's World, and that's not a bad thing. That's a good thing. Bang!
Hey, y'all, it's Ginny Ehrhart from the Southern Sisters Radio Show. Have you checked out our website, southernsistershome.com? We have the most gorgeous array of gourmet flour sack towels. They will look fabulous in your kitchen, and they're complete with all sorts of Southern sayings, designs. Go to our website and check us out, southernsistershome.com, and guess what? We have a promo going on right now. 30% off your order. Just put in promo code SISTERS at checkout. Also, free shipping on all U.S. orders.